At Rubber Band, we empower each other through positivity, kindness, and practical advice. Join a community of thousands of peers who understand the unique challenges you face. Rubber Band. Company agnostic, low ego, high empathy, always supportive. Finding the right people is tough enough. Then onboarding them effectively, managing them well, and supporting their progression is a challenge, which is why we're delighted that this podcast is sponsored by Avature. From sourcing to onboarding, talent mobility to performance management, Avature delivers the full spectrum of recruiting and talent management tools that leading organisations need. With Avature, you can manage the entire talent lifecycle from a single platform. Visit avature.net and discover why Avature is trusted by 110 of the Fortune 500. Are you a founder, a HR solo operator, or the leader of a HR team? Do you feel like you're constantly drowning in back office tasks? HR, payroll, onboarding, IT, it never seems to end, right? Well, it's time to simplify. With Rippling, imagine managing everything for your local and global workforce in one single platform. That's right. HR, payroll, onboarding, even IT, all seamlessly integrated. No more juggling multiple vendors or dealing with frustrating tech issues. Rippling does it all effortlessly. Free yourself from the admin grind and give your employees an experience that they will love. And here's the best part. For our Rubber Band listeners, Rippling is offering an exclusive deal. Get your first 3 months for free. Yes, you heard that right. Just visit rippling.com/en-au/rubberband to claim your offer. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to streamline your entire operation with Rippling. Rippling, one platform, every workforce needs it. Welcome, listeners, to today's episode of the Rubber Band podcast, where I am joined by extra special guest, Morgan Thorndyke, for a Recruitment Chinwag. Now, before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and work on, the Wadawurrung and Dja Dja Wurrung people. I recognise their continuing connection to the lands and waterways. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I would like to extend this to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Oh, it's a reunion, Morgan. Welcome. How are you?
Yeah. I know. It's so good to speak to you.
Oh,
yeah,
it's so
I'm good.
good to
How are
speak to you
you?
too. I'm doing really well, and you know the weather is beautiful. I'm looking out the window at a bright blue sky. How is it up there in Sydney? Have you got the same?
No, it's very drab today. It's not nice.
Yeah. We've had a few days like that this week, though. You know, we're getting teased with summer coming, and then suddenly it's freezing cold. But
yeah, we're getting very similar, but I'm happy. I'm doing the recording with you, first ever podcast. I'm happy to chat to you. It's been too long, and I'm really excited.
Oh, I'm excited as well. And listeners who aren't aware, Morgan and I worked together for almost 12 months at REA Group, and Morgan was a finalist in the Internal Talent Awards this year. So, I'm still celebrating that. That was a huge achievement. So we've got so much to cover today. It's so lovely to see you.
You too, and thank you. Yeah, so am I. I'm still celebrating that. That was awesome. I was very pleased. Thank you for nominating me.
Well deserved. Well, we always start with our recruitment chinwags, Morgan, by going back. You don't have to go back as far as I would have to go back, but let's go back. Let's talk about growing up. Let's talk about Morgan. Let's talk about baby Morgan.
Okay.
Family. All of that. Tell me all about you.
Absolutely. I grew up on the Central Coast of New South Wales, which is a beautiful area, very beachy, very touristy, and very casual, slow lifestyle, which I really love. And baby Morgan was the worst from what I've heard. My dad likes to tell people how his friends described me as the baby from hell because I was like a really lazy eater. I would eat like a little bit and then I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm done, guys. I'm just going to have a little sleep now. And they would like, think, great, she's full, go to bed. And I would just wake up like every hour or two because I hadn't eaten enough and I'd be like screaming, So I was a terrible baby.
I can't imagine that, like putting the word lazy and Morgan, putting those two words together doesn't make sense to me because you're one of the hardest working people I've ever come across. So there's the first surprise.
Especially when it comes to food as well. There's nothing lazy about me when it comes to food. We had a bake sale yesterday at work and I was talking to someone as they were laying out the food and we're like waiting to eat. And he goes, Morgan, I can see that we're talking, but like mentally you are only with the food right now. You are just staring at me, not even looking at me. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just really excited about the food.
Oh, that is brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And so you grew up in the Central Coast. Did you go to primary school, high school on the Central Coast as well? Is that where you continued growing up in your teenage years?
Pretty much. Like originally we were in Western Sydney for a few years, but I don't really remember that. That was like when I was really young. So most of my life I was on the Central Coast and went to school there, and that's most of what I remember. What was I going to say? I've lost it. It's gone.
No, that's right. Like I take everyone in all sorts of directions, Morgan. So you got to keep up with me and roll with the punches. Sorry.
I'm trying. I will. I'll do my best.
You're doing brilliantly. So, when you were in high school, what were your plans then? Like, what were you thinking in terms of career? I always argue that we're far too young to have any idea where we're going to be when we're in our 30s and our 40s, right? But, we get forced to say, okay, well, I'm going to go to university and I'm going to study X, Y, Z, or I'm going to get a trade and I'm going to become a plumber or a builder or whatever it is. It's thrust at us at a really young age. So what were you thinking then?
I really agree with you that you're too young to decide at that point. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like, I really did not have an answer, even at the end of school. And I had like really been enjoying studying like business and economics and in my like last couple of years of school. And so I was like, I'll go down that path because I'm not really sure what to do. And it gives me lots of options. And went into that at uni and hated economics, like really hated it, and like failed my unit. And I was like, okay, I have to change. I need to figure something else out. And I had done like a human resources unit and I thought, okay, let's give that a go instead. So I made that my major and I was like, okay, I'm pretty good at this. This is all right. I could do this. And that's how I ended up sort of coming down this path of like HR recruitment.
Oh, fabulous. And in terms of, did you have a casual job when you were growing up? Like, what was your very first job in your career?
My very first job was checkout chick at Woolies. That was my very first, and did a few different like similar ones. Kind of, I was a delivery driver at Domino's and all those sorts of like bits and bobs. So I did a few different things. I did some, private tutoring and those. I think that was like those are the main ones that I did. But yeah, I did a few different things.
There are a lot of people that come on the podcast that have a checkout chick story. That's where they started out. I kind of was. I was in. I worked in it was sort of a almost department store called Fossey's, and I was on the tills. But it wasn't quite as fast paced as the groceries. The time would have flown. Like, did it just fly? Like, because it's just constant in the supermarkets.
Majority of the time, but it also depends like what shift you're doing. Like if you start really early, like 7 a.m. we used to start sometimes, it would be like quieter until everyone is like up and at them. But, you'd start off the day then with like your elderly retirees who like to come in early and then, slow, relax, have a chat with them, have a chinwag and then get into it as the day goes on. But yeah, some shifts were busier than others and like that, especially on the weekend. But yeah, during the week it would always be a bit different.
There we go. Well, so studying HR in university and then graduating and time to kickstart your career. Tell me about your first professional role.
Oh, so I could not get a job after uni. I hadn't had any experience in a HR recruitment role. And you know what it's like, the age-old story. Everyone wants someone with experience, and yeah, I really struggled to find something. So after a few months, my first professional role I got was an unpaid internship at a recruitment agency. And that was not my favorite experience. I'm sure for reasons you can imagine. Unpaid. I was traveling from the coast to the city every day to do that. It was a great learning experience, but yeah, it wasn't my favorite. And I quickly realized that the agency environment wasn't really for me. Even though it was a very small one, it wasn't, a competitive thing or anything like that. I just felt that, I was more interested at that point in the HR side of things.
Right. So let's cast aside the unpaid internship, because that even feels illegal to me. But anyway, let's not go there. We could continue that conversation, but we'll move past the slave labour. Then what was your first paid role? When you thought maybe agency isn't quite right for me and maybe HR might be the direction I go in, what was the next step?
Well, that was my springboard to get my first paid job. So it did serve its purpose, and I got a graduate recruiter type of role, but it through a managed service provider. And so originally I was put on one account where I was doing the junior recruiter coordinator type responsibilities. But within a few months, they had this opportunity come up with a different client where they wanted a graduate in HR to support their team. And it was a bit of a bonus for the client on top of the contract that they were signing. And they said, you would be perfect for it, etc. So I ended up with that client for about a year and a half. And that was sort of my longest stint and my first proper job where I was there for longer than a couple of months on that first client. So that was a brilliant experience at Honeywell. And, I'm still friends, keep in touch with some of those people that I worked with, and just wonderful lot of people, and learned a lot. And I did realize through that as well that, HR also has its challenges, and that it also probably wasn't my thing, but I also got to do a bit of the graduate program recruitment, and then continued on into recruitment from there, and really enjoyed that.
So what is it about that? That's the golden question, because it was in those earlier years of your career that you actually, and you had a HR degree, you had exposure to broader HR with Honeywell. At some point you went, what, I think recruitment and talent acquisition is the industry for me and the direction I want to go in. What was it that made you have that moment?
I think it was more doing the early careers program at Honeywell. I only got to do it for about 6 months, but it was such a great experience, and I really enjoyed helping the grads, find roles, and having been through that challenge myself, knowing how difficult it was. And, you can really make an impact for them when it is such a challenge, and it is their first time interviewing and things like that. And all your advice and, the experience you've had can really help. Whereas for a professional, it's maybe a bit less, of an impact because they've done it all before. And I just remember really loving helping them and enjoying that supporting role of helping, the recruiter and setting things up and making things run smoothly, which was something I really enjoyed about my HR grad role as well, and felt this suits me quite well and the way I like to work. And so I was quite happy, to continue doing that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I think the majority of us that move into talent recruitment or even, HR, when we make that decision that this is the career path we're going to take, at the heart of it is we want to help people. And you talk about early careers, and one of the things that really blew me away working with you on our early careers program when we were together at REA is the sheer volume of graduates out there that are looking for, it was crazy the amount of people. I had no idea that many people were graduating, right? And that was really only within, technology. And at the core of it, we want to help people. So tell me, has the reality of that desire to be in early careers and to be in recruitment to help people, has it met your expectations, or has it come with its challenges in terms of, the motivations of what you're wanting to do?
I think it is challenging, and it's yes and no, because you do really get to help grads, but because of that volume, like you mentioned, you can't help everyone in the way you would like to, and it can be really frustrating because you want to give the best experience, you want to help everyone, but when you've got hundreds of candidates you need to get back to, you can't go back and, individually give everyone that feedback that they need and help give them, something that will help them get that next job when they haven't been able to get this one. So it can be, a bit of both of with the successful candidates, you get that great feeling of I've really helped them, and the people where you can have their personal touch point of it's not as such a high volume, but when you are, sort of with that middle group who didn't quite make it all the way but have done really well to get where they've gotten, it's frustrating not to be able to give the ideal experience, even though it's just not feasible.
And we would always notify people that they're, all of that, but it's that level of almost career coaching that is in a lot of us that we want to do, because we want to provide that really individual experience to make a difference to every single one. But when you're dealing with, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, it's just impossible. And I think that's a really big challenge in the industry, because, you don't want to think of people as numbers, and it can have an emotional, toll on us as recruiters, right? Because we're empathetic, and it's why we do what we do. I'm curious more broadly in terms of reality versus expectations in terms of recruitment generally. Like when you moved into the recruitment industry, has the reality now, Morgan, years in, has it met your expectations?
I think so. It's always been something I like to be busy, and I like to be engaged, organized, and on top of things, I like to be the go-to person to help the team and provide support, not just to the team, but to the hiring manager and the candidates. So in that respect, I feel it's really met my expectations and kept me really engaged and busy. I think, for the majority of the time I've been in recruitment, I was a coordinator and I loved that support role. However, you do get to a point where, you've done it for a long time and there isn't as much to continue learning. And so then stepping into the recruiter role has been really enjoyable for me for the past couple of years, and being able to learn more and learn different roles and get more in depth around that has been really good. I think probably the one thing that I never thought about as someone stepping into it was the cyclical nature of recruitment, of how, you are repeating to some extent the same process again and again. And obviously some roles are different, and, there is variety in different ways, but especially going into graduate recruitment, I never really thought about, you are to some extent repeating the same process every year. So that, in that respect, I didn't think about that it would not necessarily be as engaging unless there's always changes and new things that you're doing, which is always obviously happening at REA. As you know, there's always new changes and projects and challenges and things like that. But I think, in, say, smaller companies, in my past experience, it wasn't always that way. It was still great, but when you're hiring, say, 2 people and following the same process in a lower volume environment, it's a little bit more straightforward and repetitive.
Yeah. And we'll go into more detail a little bit later in terms of what you're doing with REA, because you're doing just incredible work with REA. But I'd love to know, for you to walk me through your career from Honeywell to REA. What happened in between? Tell me about the roles that you were looking after.
Sure. So after Honeywell, I went to a trading company, and I was kind of their graduate recruitment coordinator and HR coordinator. So that was great. Again, lots of variety, lots of learning, very engaging, very technical environment, lots of different roles. Obviously I had no insight into trading at all before, so that was really interesting. And again, met some really wonderful people. One of my best mates who, we've stayed close ever since for years and years, which is amazing. And after that, I went into a consulting environment where I was the recruitment coordinator, and then I became their early careers recruiter as well. And that was really cool. Again, totally different roles, going into that strategy consulting kind of side of things that I had no insight into. And again, lovely people. I'm always very lucky with that. I've always been very lucky, and getting to learn different tech roles and technology. So that was fantastic. And then I took my step into my first recruiter role officially at Rackspace Technology, which was also, really lovely, small, like local team, but big globally. So like lots of great resources there, and learned a lot specifically around like cloud engineering, because they were a service provider around like people moving and migrating to cloud majority of the time. So that was really interesting for me and like quite eye-opening, really great learning experience. And then got made redundant, unfortunately, and moved into REA now as the associate talent partner.
Amazing. Well, what a career. And you know what's really special with your experience, Morgan, and quite unusual? There's, technology recruitment is a skill in itself outside of broader generalist recruitment. Tech recruiters, they've got something that a lot of us don't have. It's its own market in itself, put it that way. Likewise, early careers, that's a specialist niche skill set within our industry that only certain people have that experience to do it. And you've got two, and they're two really, I guess, perceived as the most challenging areas. I'd throw in volume recruitment in there as well as the third, but you also do a little bit of that. So you've got the three, the trifecta, Morgan. It's really interesting experience, and you're amazing at what you do. I'm keen for you to maybe share with the audience what some of the biggest lessons you've learned are over the years.
Oh, that's a really good question. That's a really hard one. I'm going to have to think about that. I think one of the biggest ones is like people always remember the way that you treated them, and it means so much to them. And I've had, as much as you think about, we hire so many people every year, sometimes you forget some of the people that you might have hired, and then a few years later you might have someone come back to you, oh, how are you going? And I'm thinking, how do I know you? And I feel so horrible. You sort of place, oh, that's right, I hired them when I worked at that company, and I've had a few of those little things come up when they've gone, oh, I've never forgotten how you helped me, and that kind of thing. And it's so nice, and it means so much. So I do think it has really reinforced to me that like all of those interactions and the way that I work, and I take pride in, how I treat my candidates and obviously like everyone else. It does matter to people, and they do remember that. And it is really nice to sort of see that. In other big lessons that I've taken away, I think there's so many things. Like, I think that probably another really big one for me is like always like the people that you work with matter more, in my opinion, than anything else. Like you can have a great job that really, pays big money and whatever, all those things, you can have all the perks. But if you're not working with really lovely people, in my opinion, that just changes everything, and it's not worth it. I really value the people that I work with and having those, really nice relationships and a really supportive environment. And I think, that's one of my biggest takeaways of like the people you work with is everything to me.
Agreed. And those connections and those friendships remain throughout your career. And I think we are an industry, we're very close-knit, and I think it's for that reason. We form really strong partnerships, whether it's at industry level or within the organisations that we work, and we continue to, support each other and watch each other thrive and be on that journey and be there for the ups and downs. We definitely are one of those industries where it's about the people that are around you, more than trying to be a big hotshot, right? You get that a little bit in the agency world. You get, some people that are just incredibly ambitious and they want to reach for the stars, but lose the people connection. Back in my day, anyway, I know, things are quite different now. But what are you most passionate about? It can be about life, it can be about work, it can be about anything.
Oh, I'm passionate about a lot of things, and I think that's why I have so many areas that like I've worked in and stuff, because I'm a bit of a generalist. I just like to dip my fingers in every pie. But I think like the first thing that comes up for me in my mind is like my dog, and just I love him so much. Like we just like our little daily walks, like bring me so much joy. And like I went on holiday like about a month, 2 months ago, and I sent him off like the weekend before because I was leaving on Tuesday. I took him to my dad's place and dropped him off. And that like Monday where I was like home alone and I didn't have him there, I was like, oh, I'm so miserable. Yeah, just like spending time with him and training him and teaching him little tricks and stuff. I am very passionate about that. It brings a lot of joy into my life.
And what are you passionate about in the recruitment or talent industry in your work?
I think you know the answer to this. It's the grad recruitment. And, I'm so passionate about that. I love working with the grads and like seeing them succeed and helping them through like those difficult processes. And that gives me a lot of joy as well. And I do really value that, and being able to be involved in that is so special to me.
Why? Why does that bring you so much joy? I'm curious. I know, because I know for the audience. Yeah, why does that bring you so much joy, graduate recruitment?
I think it ties back into like what I said earlier of like, they can be going through a really tough time or like really not know what they're doing, of interviewing for the first time. So much value for them in giving them the advice that you would normally give to any candidate that, maybe they don't need it or they're not that fussed, they've done it before and they just do what they do and they're not thinking about is it the best way to do it and things like that. But the grads, it's so competitive, it's so intense, they're competing against hundreds of other people and they know that and they want to do everything they can to improve and be their best. And so you can add so much value and make so much impact and it means so much to them and you build that really special relationship because of that. So that's why I think it brings so much joy, because they'll really be like, oh my God, thank you so much, that was so helpful, and have you got any other things you can advise or like help me with, and that kind of thing. Yeah, it makes it so much more special.
You do, and you do remember at that. I mean, you're at the age where you're developing, right? Like, the formative years, we'll call it. But I remember. I remember. That I had some. This is back in the days where I was working in floristry, but early in my career, that there are a number of women that were just so supportive of me. Transitioning into the workforce and, being really young, the support that they gave me. And I never forget them. And I'm still friends with them on Facebook. One of them, sadly, has now passed away, and that was incredibly devastating. But, you just don't forget. At that age, people that are kind to you and they help you when you're kickstarting your career will stay with you for the rest of your life. I truly believe that. So I can relate to that. I think, I remember people like you, Morgan, back in my early days. And I'm sure you remember people that supported you in your early days too.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. No, it is a very important time.
It is an important time. Well, current role, REA, Associate Recruitment. Talent Partner. Oh, I'm forgetting already. I only left a month ago. Associate Talent Partner at REA. What do you do? Tell me about your role.
You don't need that information anymore. You've got a new role. My current role is like working across the entire business. I don't have a set portfolio, supporting on the professional recruitment, and I help out with like the grad recruitment and any other projects and, initiatives that we have going on, different events and stuff as well. It's very full of variety. It's very interesting, very challenging, as you know. But yeah, it definitely hits that generalist spot that I love. So, yeah.
Could you delve a little bit deeper, because I know it's coming up, and I think it's phenomenal that the work that you do and what REA does in this space. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do to support the Springboard program and what the Springboard program is all about.
Awesome. Yeah, no problem. So the Springboard program, for people who haven't heard of it, it's a program that we have at REA to help women and gender diverse people who want to either change careers into technology or get back into technology after, say, a career break like maternity leave or otherwise, and may not have like kept up to date and need to sort of get back up to build up their skills again, sort of thing. So it's all about helping those people. So I think we've had people who were like nurses, changing into technology, all those totally different career paths. So it's a pretty amazing experience, and it can be for people who have either done that technical study or career already, or for people who've done no study at all, and we'll support them to get those skills and do some study, and then have a permanent role where you're then, working in a developer position. So then they can also grow their career within the business, which is really fantastic, and have all the mentorship and support.
And it's a 12-month program before they actually hit the tools as well, like, isn't it? Like, is it 12 months? Is that right?
So it really depends. So if they haven't done the study, then I think depending on which course they do, which can change, but typically we've used Holberton in the past, which I think is a 9-month course, if I recall correctly,
right.
And then they can get onto the tools. But for those who have already done study, they can get straight onto the tools and be, applying those skills straight away, and straight away into a role that they, are passionate about.
Amazing. It's such powerful work to, support women in technology and gender diverse folk move into technology or re-kickstart their career in technology. I think it was always something I didn't get to hands-on experience it because I joined right at the end of the springboard, and then I left just before you kicked off the next one. But I'm so glad that you're deep into it now, and you're changing lives right there. It's a wonderful thing.
It is. It's really enjoyable. I'm really looking forward to being part of it for the first time. And we're just wrapping up now with our Women in Systems Engineering internship as well. So that's another one where it supports a community organisation that supports women in technology who are doing study and are interested in getting their first real life experience. And then we give them a almost 3-month internship, and they can learn about systems engineering. And then ideally they would be, getting a permanent position later once they finish their studies with us, which has happened we've only had 1 intake so far, but out of the 2, we hired 1, which is really great outcome.
Well, that's fabulous. Well, go Team REA, doing great work.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, finally, Morgs, your final piece of advice for anyone out there who's either working in recruitment or talent, or maybe considering a career in recruitment and talent.
That's really good question. I'm not sure what I want to say. I feel like, you can do so many different things in recruitment, and you can always, make a great impact on people no matter what you specialize in or don't specialize in. And I think the connections that you make are always the biggest takeaway, we've kind of spoken about. But I think, don't feel like you have to be tied into one area, and you can move around. I obviously have done a few different things, and, if you just put your hand up and, give things a go, you can make it work and you can learn anything. And that's something I do like about recruitment, is being able to jump into a totally new area. I've never hired anyone in this area before, and then going and learning about it and, getting to find the right person. And I think that does keep it really exciting and interesting. And so, I think that's something I would say in terms of advice is don't limit yourself. If you want to try something different, you can always give it a go.
Absolutely. It's being open to learning, being open to growth, and embracing the variety. Always challenge yourself, because you can learn something every single day in our industry. Yeah. And we learn every facet of an organization, and we can learn skills that, we understand what legal do. We understand what finance do. We understand technology. We understand marketing. We're kind of the people that have that deep understanding of what professionals do in the world, holistically. And we've got that at our fingertips. So you can constantly learn and grow. And I agree. Variety is the spice of life, Morgs. That's great advice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me for a Chinwag. It was so nice to catch up with you. I do miss you terribly, but we'll continue to catch up because we've got that connection is so important in our industry. So, Morgs, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. See you soon.
Yes.